Hi guys, it's Blackie and Bear, and this is Old Wayz number 11. So now we got to pull the boots off to count that high. In your questions and comments, we have touched upon security and stuff like that on the homestead, of being your own first responder and everything. But so many of you have asked us to go a little more in depth than that, so that's what this is going to be. After that, we're going to move on to something else. But when you're going to be, if you're looking at getting land out in the county or something like that as a homestead, you have to also consider the fact that you're going to be alone out there. Now, are you going to be living out there, or are you going to be just, this is a retreat to go to? Sorry for the aircraft.
Really, the most important question to ask is what he just said. Are you going to be living there, or is it just going to be someplace to go and spend the weekend? This whole conversation is going to twist around that point.
If it is you're not living there, and this is going to be someplace that I'm going to be going as a retreat or something like that, then, like I had told in our earlier statement about a local noticing that new road going into the woods and things like that, it would behoove you when you're selecting the land to find a place that already has an access or something to it. Better yet, if you can find something where someone has passed away and this land is old and established and it's moving over, you've got a better chance then of, because the locals already know that's, you know, Mr. Bear's land or Mr. Johnson's land or whatever, and so they've got a degree of respect or whatever for it. So therefore, you, by virtue of you coming in, can start out with a little bit of that, as opposed to just buying land that nobody's ever had anything on and putting a way in. You're going to need access in. Once you create access, it's how you're going to limit it. If you put a fence and a gate right there at the road, you do stop people from coming too far down on your land. If you put the fence and gate around the corner out of sight from the road, you attract less attention with people riding up and down the road. But if I pull down there, I've got more privacy to break through your gate. So, you know, a gate is merely a suggestion. If they want to go through it, they're either going to throw a rope around the thing and break it, or take a pair of bolt cutters and cut the padlock off of it.
It generally is a catch-22 and just a throw of the dice. It is beneficial to buy an established property, something that already has a house on it. You know, if you can find an old farming couple who wants to retire, that would be an excellent property to buy. If you want to, like you said, if there was something tied up in an estate where the successors wanted to sell the property and split the profit, that's another good thing. You can generally get fairly good deals by doing that.
Yeah, if you can find some place that has woodlands and agricultural property,
Yes.
adjoining another agricultural property, a very effective thing is you get control over it, then you go to that farmer on the other side that has that agricultural property and offer to lease him, or in some way work a deal with him to farm the agricultural fields that's on your land. One, that's him producing. You can, as payment for him using that land, you can get a part of the crop, or get food, livestock, whatever is being used for. Is it being used for grazing as pasture, or is it for row crops like corn, beans, and etc.? You can work out that. That keeps an active presence working that land, so when you're not there, see, you're more interested in the 14, 15, or 100 acres over here of woodland is what you're interested in, of putting a cabin on or a retreat on. that neighbor farmer or whatever, now he's actively keeping an eye on your land and keeping ne'er-do-wells away because of the fact he's actively working that land. So that's a good way to go.
Yeah, good neighbors make, they have advantages, because as you get to know them and they get to know you, you become invested in one another, and you watch their back, they watch your back. Once you have established your property, it's like Blackie was saying a minute ago, if you throw up a brand new shiny gate, that's blood in the water for sharks.
Yeah.
And because of the fact that it's also locked, that's even more chum in the water for sharks. In this day and age, unfortunately, very few people respect your privacy. They do not hold your property as sacrosanct. They will go on and go through every single solitary building you've got, whether it's an 8 by 10 shed or an 80 by 10 or 80 by 30, 40 built barn. They will go through and they will gut anything that can be sold for scrap to get money that they need. In most cases, not all of them, but in most cases, to fuel a drug habit. That's one reason that the scrap market collapsed a couple of years ago, was because so many people were going into so many unoccupied dwellings and structures and stripping the copper out.
Yeah, of the air conditioning units, of
Yes.
copper piping and everything else. And at the same time, I had a good friend quite a few years ago. They had built a place up north Alabama, up in the mountains, and they had ended up, I think it's 200 acres, something like that, and he wanted it for hunting. And so they had gone up there and built probably about a 18 by 18 building, a bunkhouse, had bunk beds in it, that type deal. And the idea was they'd go up there and use it for hunting. Well, they finished it up in like May, and late June he gets a call from county law enforcement up there about all this underage drinking, where some kids had found that place, and that became the party capital.
It's off the grid.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, out of sight, out of mind. There's one way in, there's one way out. It's secluded. Why not?
And they had busted up a teenage drinking party there, and they're wanting to charge him with allowing it, although he knew nothing of it. These kids didn't know him. They just found it. They found that bright, shiny new gate out there. They came around the gate. They came in here and they found this place, and that's going to be the party place Friday night. So you're going to face those kind of issues. If you're going to not live there, okay, my recommendation is a platform, just like a deck. Have you some pre-made up poles, either freestanding or anchored in place, where you can have a tent. We used to use old wall canvas tents.
Yeah, like Boy Scout camp.
Like Boy Scout camp, and just be able to set it up in 5 minutes, because all the poles are already mounted up and set. You just pick your tent up and put it over the top. So we would pull in on our vehicle, put the tent up in under 5 minutes on that deck, and then move in with our camping gear and stay there for the weekend or whatever. I have a deck on a friend of mine's land that has had some problems in the past, but my deck has been there over 25 years.
And nobody's stolen it yet?
Nobody's going to steal that deck, because it's so hard to get down in there, and so they can't get a truck or anything down to it, and so it's too much effort to tear it apart to haul it out. Nobody bothers burning it, but because of that, I've got a deck, and I can show up and have my tent up in under 5 minutes, and then have a structure that I can live out of for the weekend. carrying a pop-up tent or something like that. Now, on site, having a cache of some kind, out of sight, out of mind, secluded, possibly buried, possibly concealed some other way out there, is a pretty good idea.
Like a food cache?
Like a food cache or something like that. A good friend of mine, he had a 1972 Cadillac. And they had a party, and he invited all of his son's teenage friends over and gave them hammers and let them beat up on that Cadillac all they wanted. All the glass is busted out of it and all that stuff. And it was just, screwed it up really good.
You remember in elementary school, we used to do that at Halloween carnivals.
Yeah. He then had the car towed out there to the site to make it look like an abandoned car. The trunk, he locked up his camping gear and all in the trunk. The trunk was still good. So anybody pulling up saw this rusted out, half burnt, old derelict car with nothing to steal on it. There's nothing there to steal. And
Weeds
so
growing up around it.
weeds all the way around it, and they came in there and they saw it. There was nothing to steal, and it gave the illusion. See, he had the hood up and they'd taken the intake manifold and all off of it. It just looks like somebody dumped a derelict car. And because of that, nobody would even pay attention to it. But it was a storage unit for him. And for several years, that's what he did. To keep all his camping gear, he'd store 5-gallon cans of water. He'd store dry food stuffs like rice, beans, stuff like that. Something that if they did find it and break into it. Now, you got to understand, the metal of a 1972 Cadillac.
That's why they call them land yachts.
Oh my God, you ain't gonna stick a screwdriver in there and pop that trunk up. You're gonna need a pry bar. And
or an air hammer.
Or an air hammer. That sucker was just about reinforced. And so, but it was huge. I could get in it and lay down in it.
Mm-hmm.
It was so big. And so he used that as his storage thing for keeping camping gear and stuff he wanted to leave on site out there. Likewise, now let's talk about giving people access to your land. The 2 padlock system that I have, let's say I've got one of the best gates is not a gate, okay? It's a putwood chain going between 2 great big trees where there's no way to get through without cutting down trees around it. You run that chain through, good heavy chain. You can't lift it up high enough to get any size vehicle under it, and you can't push it down to go over the top of it. And this is those big length chain where each length like 2 inches long, 2 or 3 inches long, and it's hooked to the tree in such a way that they go around, they put a big old bolt through it, and they weld the bolt. You ain't getting it off there. They put a big old padlock to hold the chain. That way I can give the key to Bear if he wants to come down there and use my land. The 2 padlock system is this. Let's say I'm going to allow Bear's oldest son to come to my land to hunt. I'll go down there and my regular padlock, I will hook it to the chain. I will take this other padlock, which I have painted bright orange. I'll run it through the padlock and then hook it to the hasp. So it's not hooked chain, it's hooked to the padlock and to that. Now I give the son the key to that orange padlock. He unlocks it and drop it out of the way. When that weekend's over, when the season's over, I take away that orange padlock and just lock my padlock onto it. That way he can keep that key. And next year, if he says he wants to hunt it, I just add the orange padlock. That way I can get in. If I get there, I just take my padlock loose, which is from the chain to his padlock. If he shows up, he just unlocks his. So 2 sets of keys, but if I remove his, there's only 1 set of keys, mine. And that's something that I've seen a lot work with hunting clubs and stuff like that, is a way to have a key for somebody to have access and then deny them access later on.
Yes. Yeah. We have used a slightly modified version of that. We got sections of railroad iron and sunk them into the ground, welded a loop onto the side of the railroad iron. And now these things are buried probably 4.5 feet deep.
You ain't pulling it up.
You won't get it out. If I'm not mistaken, there's a bag of saccharine at the bottom of all of them also. But we have a lock similar, just like what he was saying, that runs between the railroad irons, and there's trees on both sides of the railroad irons. So getting around it would be problematic. You'd ruin your truck.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, that's a very, very effective and good way to secure the gate. You do need to think about how you're going to utilize the land. Like we're kind of leaning toward it being a hunting camp, or if stuff really got off the rails and sideways, a place to go to and bunker in. Would you be staying long term or short term? There are just a multitude of questions once you get through the gate.
Do you have water?
Do you have access to water?
Do you have access to water? Can you do a coyote well?
Yeah.
So you're naturally filtering the water to work on your side. What are your resources here, etc. The use of the land is going to dictate what we're doing. Like I said, big advantage being part agricultural with some other. If you don't have that option, but you have this woodland and the neighbor next door on this side has got agricultural field and the one on that side has got agricultural field, make friends with them.
Absolutely.
You know, you're all in this together, and talk to them, you know, about, could you keep an eye on the land for me while I'm gone? I appreciate it. If there's something I can do to help you, let's talk about it. Because maybe they got a teenage boy or they like to hunt and like to hunt your land. You can offer hunting rights. You come in and hunt too. We'll hunt, you hunt. In exchange, while I'm back in the city, you keep an eye on the land and etc. Maybe I should block access from the road and come through your land, around that agricultural field in and out. So that keeps ne'er-do-wells going up and down the canyon road having access that way. You know, there's ways you can do it to get access in and out.
Another thing is, we just touched on access to water. Does your property have a stream? Okay. Every stream, regardless, has what's called a head. And that's where it comes up out of the ground. Does your property have a spring head? Those are very valuable as a water source because it's coming straight out of the aquifer.
It's usually therefore already filtered.
Yeah, it's coming, like with us. Our soil, as we have said before, is clay and sandy loam. That's a natural filter. And if you find a spring head, excuse me.
Sinuses are tearing them up. We got everything blooming down here.
Man, I tell you what, it's been a week and it's been rough.
Yeah.
But anyway, you find your spring head, your seat where the water comes out. And if it's flowing, that much better. You have to figure out a way to secure that, to protect your water source. Because it's like we've said in videos before, 3 days without water, you're pushing up daisies.
Yeah.
There's no other way around it. You can go for about 2 weeks without food, but 3 days without water, you're gone. Mm-hmm. But modifications to that wellhead, listen to me, to the spring head, can provide you not only with a safe water source, but with a source of refrigeration.
Yeah, spring houses,
Down here we had spring houses in the day.
because usually the temperature of that water coming out of the ground is somewhere in the 50s.
Yeah, generally it's around 54 degrees-ish.
They would dig out a square area, like a shallow little pool, make it like 6, 7, 8 inches deep. It may vary in depth, and put rock or brick down. Okay, so the water flows in and then flows out of that. They would sit like in glass jars, things they wanted to refrigerate in there to keep it at 56. Now our modern refrigerators are in the 40s, but it being in the 56 when it's 90 degrees outside, you could keep things a lot longer and keep them cool. So quite often the house would be built right next to the spring head.
Right.
So you just walked out and walked over and you put a building around it.
My grandparents' house up in Pike County, their house is on a little knoll, and down at the foot of that knoll, still to this day, is my grandparents' spring house. And it's right there where the water comes out of the hillside, out of that sandy loam. And they fixed like he was saying, they put down a piece of concrete like a
Cistern.
a concrete pipe. They set it in and knocked a hole in part of it so that it would fill up. Well, it spilled over the sides and ran through a trough, and you would put your milk or anything else that you needed to be kept cold in the trough, and the water would run past it.
Running over it, you know.
We were talking about convection cooling a while back. Prime example. You could put your eggs in a basket and put them on the wall, and the convection cooling of the water coming through would keep the eggs, decent. You could store cheese, you could store meat, you could store milk, you could store whatever you wanted to in this cool environment. That is a security for a food source. When you get to your house or where you're going to be staying, there's all kinds of security issues there.
Yeah, if you're going to be staying out there, like we said, you're moving out to the country, and for those of you that have been urban dwellers most of your life, we'll go ahead and touch on firearms. We're not telling you absolutely have to do that. If you don't feel confident or comfortable with firearms, that's fine. I'm not here to try to convince you otherwise. I, as you know, and so is Bear, is very comfortable with firearms. They're tools to us. And so for being out like that, you need some sort of self-defense ability. For the ne'er-do-wells, it's a little pushy, that are willing to try to come into the house at night while you're in there.
Yeah.
Forget the ones that are the cowards that show up and try to steal your stuff while you're gone to the store. It's the ones that don't care you're there and want to come in. So having, it's a layered system like we've talked about of one, how do they get on the land? Is there a gate? Well, that's twofold for you. That means every time you go in and out of that gate, you got to relock it. That can be a pain in the butt if it's pouring rain, but you're going to have a gate, you got to have some way to open and close it. They are automatic things. You can hit a button, it'll swing them. Those can be easily just pushed by. So you got to look at that. We've touched on the fact of having dogs. There's a mobile security alarm to let you know what's going on outside the house. Security to get into your actual building or whatever. One, you've got to be able to get out in a hurry in case of fire. Two, you want to delay them coming in. So having some sort of alarm on doors or something. There's tons of these battery-powered alarms and things like that you can activate, etc., where when somebody opens the door or whatever, it makes a noise to wake you up. and to spook the bad guy to let them know that they tripped an alarm. You know, if all the dogs barking wasn't a big enough sign, you know, if you're going to be living out there. Having an internal safe room where you can barricade yourself into is a smart idea. If you go back and look at a lot of the old small houses of years and years ago, and when you find the bedroom, it quite often only had one little bitty window in it, big enough for you to go out of, but it normally wasn't, you know, it was like stand up and here's the window. You know, then people were up before dawn. So it wasn't to limit light coming in there. They didn't sleep during the day. It was because there were ne'er-do-wells outside. They couldn't shoot through a window at you. And so they would always have that one covered because they couldn't see out, but you could peek out and look out.
The old style Spanish window louvers are fantastic for stuff like that. Touching on the subject of firearms, like he said, for us, they're just another tool in the box. Just like your hammer, your saw, your draw knife, you know, your froze, your axes, your shovels, all of that stuff, they're just tools, okay? Nobody have a meltdown, okay? Just listen.
Yeah.
Before you melt down, just hear what we're saying. As far as being comfortable with, first thing out of the box, we encourage you to take a training course if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Okay, guys have a big tendency to not want to read the directions. Guilty. Just jump in and go. Well, you can't just jump in and go, because once you fire a gun, you can't unfire it. Okay? You need to, if you're new to the sport, and guns are a sport, target shooting, single action,
And
shooters
they provide, you
association.
use them for hunting and
Yes.
provide food. So they are if you're talking about living off grid, you're going to want to learn this resource because it is a source of meat.
In 50 out of 50 states, it is agreed that hunting is a sport. Okay? Get training. By all means, get training. If you have never picked one up before, get training. Secondly, any mechanical safety on a gun, it's a secondary safety. The best safety on a gun is the one that sits between your ears and behind your eyes. That is the best safety for a firearm you will ever find. Okay? You have to think about what you're doing. You have to think about what's behind your target if you're going to fire. If you're going to shoot that, 80-point buck, then you got to consider what's behind. Because if you look across the field for about that long and you see one of your companions coming across in his orange hunting vest because he's been skunked, you can't pull that trigger. He may be a world record, an Alabama record, or a Georgia record, or whatever record. You cannot pull that trigger.
Too big a risk.
It's way too big a risk.
I would suggest, just like you don't just get thrown behind the wheel of a car.
Right.
They give you a manual to read to understand the rules. If you're wanting to use firearms to hunt with, to provide for the family, most of your game wardens will have a plethora of resources to help you out. The Boy Scouts have a shooting sports manual. I was a Boy Scout shooting sports instructor.
An excellent one, by the way.
And so they have a rifle and they have a shotgun book. Those are available. Get it and get a working knowledge of it before you ever buy your first one. If we're talking about living off grid, money's tight, what would I recommend for a hunting gun, self-defense gun of a homestead, 12-gauge shotgun? You can hunt anything in North America with a 12-gauge by what ammunition you're using at the moment. For home defense, it's a superior gun because I don't know of anything that can stand up to one at point blank range.
It can, and also if you're using a light shot like a turkey load for home defense, you can get the bad guy easily, but you won't shoot through the wall and hit your kids asleep in the bed behind it.
That's the thing. I want something that does an effective job here, but not over penetrating. That's the problem when you start talking about big old rifles and everything. And
yeah, lots of people love the AR-15. I like an AR-15, okay? And by the way, AR is not assault rifle. It's Armalite
rifle. Yeah.
Okay? Does not mean assault rifle. Anyway, that having been said, people love the AR-15 for home defense. And you see these guys in videos who have all the bells and whistles. They've got the lights, they've got the IR lights, they've got the laser pointers, they've got the IR laser pointers, they've got the scope, they've got scopes that just blow your mind. Well, that's not the point. The point is immediate short-range protection. You don't need all that crap, okay? And they're pushing left and right. Oh, you got to have this, you got to have that, you got to have that. No, what you got to have is trigger control. All right, plain and simple.
And the fact that if you shoot that power of a gun, and you ask veterans that have done this for real in enclosed city fighting in the Gulf War or something else, shooting one of them things indoors is not pleasant.
No. And, the problem, ask a law enforcement officer, because they have to deal with the overpenetration question every day.
If it goes through that wall, I broke in. Him having to defend against me is righteous. But the bullet that went through me, went through that window and killed grandma down the street, you've now got to defend against. And that's one of those things. Being on the homestead or whatever, yeah, I won't have as much of that. But I recommend a 12 gauge. With something like a turkey load for home defense. Learning to hunt with it, hunting small game would be better because small game come back faster. So shooting rabbits and squirrels and things like that, you can hunt to your heart's desire, and next year they're right back, you got more of them again. Whereas you can overdo big game in your area, but you can take big game with slug and buckshot, etc. Small arms like handguns, stuff like that, are great for point blank. Again, more skill is involved, and you've got to practice more on realistic, because according to the FBI, defensive shooting is 21 feet or less in most cases. Well, 21 feet is an awful big room across, so most things are point blank.
A friend of mine who is in law enforcement told me one time that they trained him on what's called the 3 to 5 rule. And most engagements between a suspect and law enforcement occur within 3 to 5 feet, involve 3 to 5 shots, and it's accomplished in 3 to 5 seconds.
Yeah, it's over, one way or the other.
It's done.
So if you're going to be thinking you have to have defense, I want everybody to avoid being put in that situation. So it's like an onion, it's a multi-layer system. I want a gate to deter at least some of them coming in. I want dogs running around if I'm living out here to alert me and to try to scare them off.
Yeah, if you're out there permanently, dogs is a good idea.
If you're going to be living out here, get dogs. Like I said, they can be pets, or they can be like my granddaddy, you just feed them. But that doesn't mean you don't take them for rabies shots and stuff like that, guys. Be responsible. But it's an alert system. It scares off ne'er-do-wells that are not that motivated, and it gives you a warning whenever somebody is trying to be dangerous. Therefore, you don't have to be put into a situation where you have to defend yourself from home invasion, etc. But as we've touched about, you're out there alone. It might be 45 minutes or an hour, depending on where you're at in your county, or even more time before law enforcement or whatever can get to you. And so you need to have that situation, realizing that I'm out here by myself for X amount of time. So you've got to have multiple layers overlapping. Try to deter them from getting there. Try to get your warning system. Having some sort of internal alarm if you're not going to have dogs that will go off when a door is opened or whatever. An old redneck alarm system that we used to do. If you'll look, and you know what I'm about to describe, you just probably don't know it the way I call it. There's this socket that you go get that you screw into a light socket, and then you screw a bulb in it, and you got a pull chain, and it's got a plug-in where you can plug in an extension cord. That's for houses like me and Bailey grew up with, where you had one light in the ceiling and there were no wall outlets. You can still buy them at Walmart, etc. Well, what we did was, you can get a motion sensitive light bulb thing. We'd screw it into one of those sockets, and it's got a light sensor that when something moves in front of it, it activates. So we would take a lamp, and what we did, we took a board and we mounted like a little reading lamp on it. We'd screw that motion sensor facing that way, and then we would plug into it to a boom box or a radio on maximum volume. Now I rig that up so I just plug it in when I'm going to bed or whatever, so it's facing the whole front of the cabin. Anything moves and that radio comes on at maximum volume. The motion sensor ain't turning on the light, it's turning on the radio. And we lived in these old houses down in the Cotton Mill Village, and there were a lot of ne'er-do-wells. It was a high crime area. We locked every internal door every night. At sundown, all external windows were shut and locked. The back door was shut and locked, and then every internal door was locked to buy us time and make the bad guys make noise. So we'd hear them coming. And my house was broken into several times.
That's just basic layered protection. Not to get too far off into the weeds, but while he was talking, I was thinking about other methods of security. A lock, for all intents and purposes, is just it's just something to keep an honest person out. If you've got somebody who is determined to come in, they're going to come in, whether the lock's there or not.
Break a glass, break a door.
They're going to come in. There's not a whole lot you can do about it. But instead, not dwelling on the physical security of the building, let's talk just a moment, shift gears to like fire security. A good fire extinguisher is a great thing, and you can buy them at Tractor Supply. I think you still buy them at Tractor Supply.
Yeah.
You can buy them at Harbor Freight. You can buy them at Lowe's. You can buy them at Walmart. It's not hard to find them. And get you 3 or 4 of them and salt them out through your house. If you have an outbuilding, mount it in your outbuilding. Okay?
And if you've got kids, establish a meeting point.
Yes.
So that in the confusion, smoke detector is a great thing to have in the house. That doesn't mean dinner's done.
Right.
Get smoke detectors. If the smoke detector goes off, your kid's job, your job is to get out. What is the fastest way out, most direct, and everybody meets at this point away from the house, like at the corner of the garage or at this corner of the yard, wherever the vehicle's parked, whatever. Everybody goes there, because if everybody just scatters like quails, and you and your wife have come out on this side and you're hollering, and in the excitement, your kids don't hear nothing.
Yeah.
You know, and they're on the far side of the house, but you think they're still in the house.
Yeah, you're going back in.
You're going back in.
Yeah.
And that happens where parents or kids get killed because they come out and mommy and daddy didn't show up. Well, they all went in different direction.
Right. You know, it can be something like he was saying, as just benign as this tree in this corner of the yard. Because if you have a storage building that's close to the house, it may catch fire. You know, the cars, depending on where they're at, might be engulfed. I've seen houses burn completely down that started where a car had a short.
Yeah, car caught fire and then it burned the
Car
house
caught
down.
fire, the rest of the house followed. Backing up, coming at it from another tangent, we advocate the use of cast ironware, okay? It's heavy. The lids that come with it are heavy. One of the best things to do if you have say you're cooking and you have a grease fire, grab that big heavy cast iron lid, put it over the fire and smother the fire out. Cut your eye off and move it off of the hot eye.
And let it cool off.
It's done. You've deprived it of oxygen. It'll cool off and then the danger will go away.
Number one rule, if you don't know anything else, if grease, you're frying something, whatever, and it just gets too hot and it reaches that flash point and it ignites, okay? How do you know it's getting close to that? It'll start smoking a little bit. It ignites. When it ignites, do not, I will say again, do not pour water on it.
No.
Hey there, baby, you've been to the river, haven't you? How you doing? And
bad idea.
you just made napalm. You just slung. It doesn't extinguish it. You go supercharged suddenly, and a little bitty problem becomes half the kitchen's now on fire. You smother it. So, like he was saying, have the lid to slap over the top of the pot. Something like that. Here's something else that a good friend of mine, he had on his homestead, he had Coleman stoves. And he didn't have it rigged up for a regular stove yet, so they were just using Coleman stoves. He got a welder blanket. Tractor Supply sells them, Lowe's sells them, so does Harbor Freight. And this is a blanket so that welders can put down whenever they're cutting with torches and slinging sparks. This thing don't burn. You can throw it over something and smother it out. And so he kept that in the kitchen, so if that stove caught fire for whatever reason, he could throw it over the top of it, you know, and smother it, even scoop it up, you know, while it's burning, because it's basically an asbestos blanket. You can put a blowtorch on it and hold it, it ain't gonna burn, you know. And so by doing that, he was able to get it outside. He had a stove that lost the seal and caught fire. And so he just threw the blanket over it and took it outside in the yard and let it burn out there. Those blankets are not expensive. And so if you're looking for a way to fight a fire quickly, up close, and you're going to be the firefighter, because the county, when they get out here, they're there to just hose off what's left. So you're the one that's got to be facing fire, realize the problem and the dangers. And there's a lot of good resources if you'll start looking on living on the homesteads, fire prevention, fire protection. A good friend of mine, that he had come out of the restaurant industry, and he had a big double wide trailer that they were going to move on the back side of the county, and there wasn't. I think they figured out his fastest response time for the volunteer fire department would be something like 35 minutes.
Now, understand, we are not knocking volunteer fire departments.
Not at all. They're fantastic.
They are great and wonderful guys that are getting out, the guys and girls that are getting out there and doing what has to be done. But that does, and you know, they are fantastic people, but it doesn't diminish the response time.
But he went and he had his double wide trailer, and he was going to be putting a separate roof over the whole thing. And so what he did was he came down from in the ceiling of every room and put a sprinkler head. And that sprinkler head is rigged to the pump out here, and the command to make it activate is out at the pump house. Well, if there's a fire, he's going to get the whole family out, and he's going to throw that switch, and every room in the house has suddenly got a sprinkler spraying wall to wall in it.
Everybody meet at the pump house.
Everybody meet at the pump house. And because he could throw that, and he's going to be fighting the fire, you know, it'll still be something damaged.
Yeah.
But a lot of be recoverable too.
Damage can be repaired, death can't.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get another bedspread or something, but
Yeah.
come on.
Also, carbon monoxide detectors,
Yeah.
must.
If you're going to be running any kind of wood stove or whatever, carbon monoxide detector is very good. Modern structures are sealed up so tight, whereas the houses we grew up in that had fireplaces in, they leaked so much, we'd have wind blowing, the calendar would flutter on the wall, you know, inside. So you didn't have to worry about too much about carbon dioxide buildup because there's so much airflow. But if modern structures that seal up so tight, you absolutely do need them. Well, how long are we at now?
47 minutes.
I think that's enough. So, guys, to retouch on it, security is going to be largely a matter of situational. One, you want to, if I'm going to be living here permanently type deal, then I want to limit access to the general public by a gate. Can I come through a neighbor's land? Can I make friends with neighbors?
That's a really good idea, though, getting a easement from your neighbor. That way you don't have to, like you said, put in a new gate, a new shiny gate with a new shiny lock.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to do that, and you can come across your neighbor's land, which borders yours anyway,
Yeah,
and kind of camouflage the fact that you're even there.
that's a big help if you can do that. Then, you know, like I said, multi-layers. I got a gate. If I'm going to be staying out here, then I need a dog or a couple of dogs, something to give me an early warning system that something's going on. You're going to need smoke detector, carbon monoxide detector. You're going to need the ability to fight a fire, at least in the small term. Have a plan for everybody in case of fire. Here's where we meet. Okay? At the same time, everybody that's going to be there should, and if there's going to be, say, a shotgun for the snake in the yard that we need to get rid of, for the hunting or whatever, everybody there should have a working knowledge of it, even if they don't like guns, etc., at least understand how the operation is, because nothing is more dangerous than someone that has zero experience trying to figure it out.
Right.
That's just a big no.
On-the-job training is not an option.
No. I had a good friend of mine, his wife didn't like guns. He was a hunter. She didn't want to have anything to do with them. He had inside the kitchen door was a pump shotgun for in case of whatever. And they had ducks. And they had little ducklings, you know. Well, this hawk had got after a duck, and you're not supposed to shoot birds of prey, okay? But the wife was all upset that one of her duckies had got hurt, and that red-tailed hawk had landed and killed one of her duckies, and out of being mad, she snatched that shotgun out of the back of the house, stepped up on the back porch, pointed it in the general direction of the bird on the fence post, and pulled the trigger and blew the back glass out of the pickup truck, because the pickup truck was parked about 5 feet beyond the hawk. She had no clue what she was doing, and so she didn't get the hawk, but she did get the Ford F-150 real well.
That's fair trade.
Fair trade, yeah. So again, training and planning. Everybody in the house should know what the fire plan is. Everybody in the house should at least have a working knowledge of the gun. Everybody in the house should have a working knowledge about the dogs. That if the dogs go to barking, you know, I mean, not that, oh, I'm bored bark, but a bark, I'm upset. And you For those of you that have pets, you know what I'm talking about. There's a difference. You just learn to tell the difference. To realize.
It's like when you have an infant at home. Their I'm hungry cry is different from their I'm dirty cry.
Or I'm scared cry.
Their I'm scared cry is different from both of those. Or if something is seriously wrong,
Yeah.
that cry is different from the other three.
Yeah. I'm in
And
pain.
like you're saying with the dog, you learn the differences.
You'll be able to listen to them bark, and that's the, I'm hearing something and I'm just barking, and then there's that rapid bark, 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 bark. That's where I'm looking at something, Dad. You need to come look at this.
Yeah.
And don't be tone deaf to that. That's what the dog's doing its job. It's alerting you. If there is some, at night, a really powerful flashlight. Something I project a beam way down yonder in the woods. Things like that.
Now he's not talking about the 14 million candle power searchlight.
No.
He's not talking about that. He's talking about something that's small that you can hold in your hand underneath
Yep.
the shotgun, or something that you can actually attach to it.
Yeah. And one I carry in my pocket, it's got 1,000 lumens. That big. It clipped to my hat, it'll clip to whatever. But if I have to go out at night, because I kind of live out a little bit, and if there's a noise I need to go investigate, this will be going with the other part.
Right.
Because if I'm looking, that's where I should be pointing. Don't be doing this. Do this. And it'll be this being left hand, and the other thing will be in the right hand.
Yeah.
And it'll be the shotgun or whatever, and I'm investigating why they're beating and banging noises coming from my shed out behind the house, etc. Because, I know that somebody's going to say, why don't you just call the cops and let them investigate? Remember that it might be an hour,
Yeah.
and nothing will tick off your local law enforcement more than crying wolf every couple of days because there's actually a coon getting into your chicken pen or something.
On a good day, response times of 20 minutes are ideal.
Yeah.
From the time the call comes in. And if you're out in the county, you can about double that.
And so they've got things they got to do, real stuff. And so before I'm going to waste their time, I'm going to at least, make the look. Now, you got to do you. If you're not confident, absolutely go right ahead. You've got to be honest with yourself about all of this. You chose to come out here. You chose to live out like this. It's part of a package. You find out why those people that we talked about, that we knew, the old timers, why they were so secretive. They didn't talk about their business. They didn't talk about what they had and things like that to keep people from showing up. You didn't go bragging about your brand new 4-wheel drive.
Or your brand new Ford tractor, or your John Deere tractor.
Oh yeah.
You didn't do that.
Yeah, because somebody will want it more than you. You kept everything quiet, and they stayed to themselves for a reason. That was part of their security system as well. Well, guys, leave something else?
Yeah, I have a possible suggestion for Old Wayz 12.
Okay.
Homestead Security 2.0. Because we've just scratched the surface.
Yes, we have. But we've already done. Okay, we'll come back to this.
We'll discuss it.
We'll discuss it. And there'll be another one down the line. But we'll look at it. But throw us some ideas down in the comments, guys. We really love to hear from y'all. Thank you for receiving this so well and promoting it. And down the line, not right now, but down the line, Bear's going to be setting up his own channel. And he's already got a tripod, he's getting his camera. I'm going to be working with him, and we're going to be setting up his channel, and it's going to be more focused toward the prepping, stuff like that. You want to show some canning skills and all kinds of that stuff. And I will be making videos with him on his channel, and he'll be making some on my channel, of course.
Yeah, this will not end.
This ain't ended.
Okay, with Old Wayz Talks, you'll get them on both sides.
Yeah.
Okay, you'll get those on both channels. Don't worry about that. You're not going to lose anything.
But whereas with home canning doesn't necessarily fit with my channel because mine is more outdoors woodsy stuff. where it would fit with his, and so we together and he could focus more. We could do a whole thing on how to do canning, or how to do tanning, or how to do baking, or how to do whatever, or these outdoorsy or homestead skills, more of the prepping homestead skills, and I can help him with that, and etc. And at the same time, more of my woodsy skills on my channel. So we're still going to be doing both channels. Don't think, you know, I'm going away or whatever. He's not. But it's just we're going to just expand the road a little bit,
right,
so we can go more in depth. You know.
Yeah, right now we're planning on having a little homesteading stuff, some blacksmithing, some woodworking, you know, cooking, different kinds of things like that. It's still coming together. Just be patient with us, and we'll hope we'll have something that y'all will enjoy.
That's the idea. Well, anything else, sir? All right, guys. Well, I hope you've enjoyed it. And again, thank you very much for supporting the channel. And please do a comment down there for us and let us know what you'd like to see in the next one. And Old Wayz number 12, a dozen, first dozen. All right. And we'll take it up and do it as quick as we can. Till next time, guys, I'm Blackie and Barrett. Wishing you safe journeys. Have a great day, guys.